Here I am.
Hello. Right, there we go. So, hi everybody. I am wondering where the other 87 people are, but we won't worry about that because the important thing we always say at DINT is everybody who comes gets to take away something, some learning that they can apply in their own organizations. And so even if only one person came, we would still run it because that's what we're all about. So I have some news. So for anybody that's new to DINT, this runs once a month, and then we normally have a break in the summer. The purpose is just to join up experts in various aspects of diversity and inclusion with people who want to learn more about it, or with other experts. It's very informal, really quite kind of flexible, the whole running order. But I'll give you a brief overview. We're going to get started with the speakers in a couple of minutes. I'll do the intro, and then we'll talk probably for half an hour, 40 minutes, and do feel free during the chat to, if you have Q&A questions, you don't have to wait to the end. You can just click the little question mark raise hand at the bottom of the emojis and put your hand up. And Margot, who's sitting on my far left, your far right as you're looking at us, we'll hand you the microphone so we can ask questions as we go through. But we'll probably go for, say, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then we'll leave about 15 minutes at the end for some networking, and the speakers will be coming down to the tables and moving around, and we can have a bit of a chit chat. So news for those people who come regularly, you will notice that our co-organizer Richard is not here today and was not here last month either. So last month, just as we were having an amazing DINT event, Richard was having a baby, or at least his wife was, and today he's still recovering from that. He's still enjoying time with the baby and probably isn't sleeping yet. So we're hoping that he'll be back next month, but that's where he is. And as if in some strange kind of unison, he had a baby boy, and then Zara Shah, who was our first ever speaker at DINT last year, so almost a year ago now, has also had a baby boy in the last few weeks. So we kind of seems to be the month of DINT babies. So that's the news. That's the news from us. Other than that, just want to make sure, so anybody who's new to Room Key, if you want to move chairs, you just need to click on a chair and a little green dot will appear, and you can kind of hop around between tables and chairs. If you're on a table and you speak, the only people who can hear you are the other people on your table, just like in a real event. If we want to ask questions, as I said before, you click the little question mark thing, and then Margot will hand you the microphone, and at that point the whole room will be able to hear you. Be aware that you might be on mute, so if you need to speak, you might need to unmute, and if at any point you have a complete disaster, just leave and come back again, and that always fixes it, but that probably won't happen. Lovely. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce the people on the stage with me. So on my very far left, your right, is Margot. Give us some love or a wave or something, Margot. Thank you. Margot is our community and comms organizer, so she will be blogging about the event afterwards and also helping me run it. And she's the person that sends you all those lovely newsletters. Next to Margot, we have Shahad, who is one of our amazing speakers. So Shahad is a leading attorney in the US on immigration and is one of the co-hosts of the Immigrant Girl podcast. And next to her, Randa, who happens to be Shahad's auntie and is here in the UK and is one of the most influential women in tech as per Computer Weekly, and is a tech entrepreneur. So I'm going to actually let them introduce themselves now and tell you a little bit more about themselves. So I'll hand over to, either of you, but maybe we'll start with Shahad.
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful event. I did show up last time, and I had such a good time, with the application and the fact that you can show up and network with your leggings and shirt, basically. I love that. So I'm here to give back to the community this time as a person on stage. I immigrated to the United States when I was 12 years old with my family. I grew up basically in the United States. Most of my teenage years and adult life was spent there. I attended a university there and majored in political science for my bachelor's degree, and then went on to go to law school and became an attorney. Upon becoming an attorney, I started a practice, and it was really built around immigration at first as an immigration practice. But then now I see it more where my clients are the immigrants. I service all of their needs, not just needs related to immigration law. And that's basically my background coming together with the customers that I service and in the industry that I work for. And out of that was born an Immigrant Girl podcast, and I hope we'll talk about that a little bit after Rhonda gives her introduction.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me, Davina and Margot. I am Rhonda Bennett. I do live in London, in the UK. I came to the UK 23 years ago as an immigrant from war-torn Iraq, and settled here and started building a career in technology. And a few years ago, I broke away, so I started my career in consultancies and moved on to the industry, to the energy and telecoms and so on. But a few years ago, I broke away completely and I started my first tech startup, which was a fintech. And then during COVID, I completely changed paths. I wanted to do something that will help our community and help the country during such a difficult time. So I started a company called VHelp, which helps charities reimburse volunteers' expenses. So it's another fintech, and that's me. And of course, yeah, I produce the An Immigrant Girl podcast with Shahed. So I am her auntie, but I'm only a few years older than her because my sister is a lot older than me. Over to you, Davina.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I was on mute. I always said everybody else not to do that, and I did. So I was thinking, I know, Shahad, that you've got an icebreaker question for us. I was thinking before we get onto that icebreaker, maybe if we could just hear a little bit about your personal journeys, and why this topic is so important to you. And I'm going to put it straight back to you, Randa, this one.
Yeah, sure. So my personal journey as an immigrant who picked up my life and moved to another country with a country that spoke a different language, completely everything was new to me. It wasn't an easy journey. It was a tough journey. And at the beginning, particularly, it was very, very difficult when nobody actually talked about inclusion, nobody talked about diversity. I did feel I was the odd one out, especially as a woman in technology 23 years ago. If you think about it, there were less and less women in technology. So that's why I think this topic is very, very close to my heart, and I see people, like I mentioned earlier that I've worked with people from Cognizant, and I remember, with Cognizant, for example, they fly people over to the UK to do an assignment for 6 to 12 months, and they fly over. And I see the struggles these people have because they get flown over and they're thrown into the deep end, and they have to just function exactly like they functioned in their home country. And that's why, I'm always thoughtful and, considerate of these people, because I know how difficult it is for them. It's not just doing the job, it's understanding the culture as well. So that's why it's very close to my heart.
Oh, thank you, Rand. And Shahad, do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey and why it's so important to you?
Yes, absolutely. I came to this country at a younger age than Randa immigrated to the UK. I came to the United States, and I was able to learn the language within a few months. And so sometimes we think that children are going to suffer in a new environment, and I did for a brief period of time, but then within a few months, the language was no longer a barrier. Other things, the cultural things, become a bigger barrier than just the language, because language even though you can understand it, sometimes the phrases and things like that are harder, and it takes time. It takes the time to integrate into the culture. So there are two types of people that come to a country. Some people that really want to hold on to everything they have and not integrate and section themselves away from the culture. And there are people who like to completely get assimilated. And I think I fall in the category of people who tried as hard as they can to assimilate. And so people really couldn't tell that I'm a foreigner until they asked my name, which is a very different name. They had never heard it before. But before then, from looking at me, I know you could see my avatar right now, but I generally have that skin tone as well. I have brown hair. So I blend into a lot of cultures. I'm ambiguous. But I think now I see this push for more diversity and inclusion. And I think we focus a lot on sometimes race and background, and sometimes we forget that diversity also comes in different shapes and sizes. Sometimes you're a person within the culture, you're not an immigrant, you're born there, but you still feel like you fit into a diverse group. You are different than the other workers that are around or the other employers that are around, because your journey is different than everybody else's journey. And I hope that we are in a global world. We're catering more positions to those people as well, that it's not just a promotion of immigrants and people that have come from another culture, but people that have a different background. And I say that because really I'm noticing it so much in my field. I am a lawyer, and I see a lot of people apply for jobs in corporate law firms and basically get rejected, sometimes because for reasons that they may not understand, but it's because they don't fit a certain mold in the corporate world. I say that from personal experience because I'm watching my fiance, who's African American, go through it all the time when he applies for jobs. He's usually overqualified for the job, and sometimes maybe he doesn't get it because of the corporate environment is not fostering that type of diversity. And so I'm an immigrant myself, but I'm also tied to a lot of other communities that seem to be either disenfranchised or not in the mainstream. And so I find it really important for me to say, well, if I can communicate with those people, how can I bring them to the table? And so if I could use my identity and my outward face to say, well, if I can get into this circle and be accepted, let me bring the people behind me and open the door for them. And that's really my biggest passion about inclusion and diversity.
Shahad, I think Cecil is here.
He is here. My fiance is here.
Wave at us, Cecil.
Well, you're going to have to stop talking about him now. He's self-conscious. Shahad, did we want to do the icebreaker now, just so we can get everyone chatting? I think we've got a couple of people on tables on their own, but maybe we can, like Cecil, for instance, and I think Sahaj has just joined. So maybe, I don't know, Sahaj, if you want to come and join Cecil on the red table, you basically have to double click a chair to move, but then I'll get Shahad to explain the icebreaker. Perfect.
Thank you, Davina. So I just want to see, does everybody know how to raise their hand in the app? Just so I could, yeah, perfect. Okay, so I could see. So can I get a show of hands of how many people in the audience are employers? So we got one here. I know Cecil is an employer, so I'll count him. And then how many people are employees? And I don't mean an employee of your own company, but you actually work for someone else, including contract labor. Okay. And then how many people either employ or are currently working with immigrants or have worked with immigrants or someone with an immigrant background or upbringing? Okay. Now, besides immigrants, which is somewhat of an obvious diversity flag, it's the easiest one. What other identities would you consider to be diverse? Can you guys throw out some words that you hear, buzzwords? You know, what other diversity groups can we think of?
So to do that, you can either put it in the chat or you can raise your hand and Margot will give you the microphone to speak to everybody.
Margot, just to say, there is one person on the green table on their own. So perhaps if they join Cecil's table, the red table.
So Johnny, I think that's you. You've just joined. I don't think you've been before, but if you want to move tables, you basically just have to double click on, or single click actually, even on a chair, and a little green dot appears. So you should be able to move on to the red table in the middle by just clicking on that chair.
Perfect.
Oh, and now we've got someone else on that table as well.
No,
I think it's the entry point.
Me.
Oh, that was you. You went. And she's back. Yeah. She's back. Right, we're all sorted.
So does anybody have any groups that they can throw out to me about what is a diversity? Neurodivergence shows up in the chat. Can somebody explain to me what that is? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that. Maybe Alejandra, I don't want to call you out, but I would love to understand what that means, that category. I think she's probably speaking.
Margot, are you able to give the microphone to Alejandra?
Yeah, I'm trying to right now. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. For some reason, I don't have that access anymore, so I'm just figuring that out. One sec, I'm just going to hop out and come back.
Okay, sure. I might be able to do it in the meantime. Hang on, let me just give that a clue. Alejandra, let me just try it. There you go, I think I've done it.
Dina.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Yeah, we can all hear you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that wonderful explanation. Are there any other groups that you guys can come up with? Yes, I was looking for the LGBTQ. That's another one that comes up a lot. And I was looking for people of color. It comes up a lot. And maybe women sometimes. And especially women. And I'll hit on that topic a little bit later. So to move on a little bit from that, can anyone in the audience share with us some positive stereotypes of a diversity worker? So what are some positive stereotypes that you that you hear at work about those types of workers? Yes. Rebecca. Can we give the microphone to Rebecca?
Davina, if you don't mind, I'm just... Oh, perfect. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, we can. I'm on it, Margot. I'm on it. Yes, we can hear you, Rebecca.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Any other ones that pop to mind? Things like that people identify as hardworking, sometimes family oriented, financially responsible, reliable. And I wanted to reflect on those things. Those are very positive stereotypes that come with employing someone that might be of a different background. But they are also, sometimes they cut against the employer because those qualities are also very desirable in that diverse person. So just because they're marketable to you, they might be marketable to other people. So you have to hold on to them. You have to create and foster an environment in your company that in order to retain those employees, because they're bringing so much to your company, but they can go anywhere because they're that marketable. Those are the type of things I wanted us to reflect a little bit about. And so the reason why do you have any ideas of why someone might hire someone from a diverse background, or why you think you were hired with your diverse background? Do you have anything you can reflect and share with the group about that? Oh, I love the chat says diversity of opinion and viewpoints. They work extra hard. Gender spectrum was mentioned with trans and binary. And so Lauren asked a question, what does those types of workers mean, people who identify as a minority? I really wanted to open it up so that we discuss all of people with a diversity background. So they don't actually have to identify as minority. Sometimes they are a majority in the country. Like women could be a majority, but they could still be a minority because they are still considered a minority in a lot of workplaces. They might make up 51% of the company, but sometimes they're still considered a minority. And so sometimes employers seek out those people because they are going to give you a different perspective and maybe cut into a customer base that you had never thought about, because you don't know how to market your product or your service to that group of people. A really big example of that is a personal example for me. I am an Arab woman from the Middle East. I speak Arabic. I opened an immigration practice thinking Arab clients are going to come to me in droves. And it just so happens that the largest group of people that I service happen to be Hispanics. And so how do I deal with that? And I'll bring that up later in the discussion. You know, how do you deal with a customer base you didn't even think about, or a group of people you didn't even think about? And how does that open you up for more opportunities and more diverse areas that you can get into that you had never thought about? With that, Davina, I'll bring it back to you. I just wanted to do a little bit of icebreakers and get everybody's wheels turning about the discussion. I love what's happening in the chat, by the way.
That's amazing, and that was great. Thank you, everybody, for all of your really interesting answers and ideas there. So I'm interested, just to find out maybe about the challenges that you both faced when you first moved from Iraq to the UK and the US. It sounds like, from what I know, you had two really different arrivals. So Randa, you went to the UK, you weren't able to speak in grocery stores, you felt isolated and angry, I think, with Baghdad. And Shahad, you went to school and the kids spoke to you and welcomed you, and it sounds like you missed home a bit more, perhaps. So do you want to just both talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I came to the UK, I was 20 years old, and I learned English at school, just like you learn French at school. You land in the country and you hardly can open your word with a sentence, right? So it was pretty challenging to move from being a very active person, very bubbly personality, to someone who can't put two words together. I immediately lost my sense of humor. I immediately lost, I became a different person all of a sudden. Went from a very outgoing person to a very shy person, and of course, I had to start building that. Brick by brick, and it was pretty difficult. So your question, Davina, was about, how did we overcome those first challenges, right?
Yes, exactly, because it can't be easy, right? Arriving in a new country
Yeah.
and having to start effectively from scratch.
Absolutely, and especially when it comes to career, which is the focus here, it was quite accidental how I got into technology really, because when I first arrived, I was completely lost. I did not have a clue, and I was overwhelmed by options. Now, a lot of people that immigrate from countries that are going through conflict have very little options. So when I came to the UK, I was quite overwhelmed with the amount of options I had, and I was completely lost. But then I stumbled upon technology, and one thing led to another. I started working within technology. I did a degree in technology, and I kind of got stuck in it. But it was, getting my first job. So within 3 years, I was working for one of the UK's biggest consultancies, technology consultancies, and but it looked really impressive on paper, and all of my kind of friends were very impressed with me. How did you manage that? But it was very difficult for me, and cringeworthy most of the time, because I'd be sat in a meeting and not have a clue what's going on. So I improved my English, obviously, but still, when you're kind of in that very technical environment, and it was actually at the time a very very white middle class environment, technology. So everybody had banter, and I had and banter is what we call in the UK. When people have those inside jokes, very culturally related jokes. I didn't understand any of that. So on top of doing the job, you have to not just learn the job, you have to absorb the culture around you and learn organization kind of politics, learn how to deal with people, learn what's right and what's wrong within that culture. So yeah, it was interesting. It was very tough, but it's like one person said, you adapt very quickly, and you become very strong, and very tough skinned.
Just before we go to Shahad, I mean that's fascinating, Randa. But I'm interested to know in all of this, what could the people around you have done differently, or were there some that really kind of shone out in terms of, because we're all, I think we probably all work with people from other countries and cultures, and it'd be nice to know what we can do differently in our workplaces.
Absolutely. So the people that really left an impact on my life were those friends that I made in the workplace, who helped me understand like things like slang. So you don't think about slang twice, but I didn't understand English slang at all. And I had my friend Juliet, who was wonderful, and it was a joke. She'll teach me slang, and she'll teach me swear words, and she'll teach me all of these little things that helped me be a little bit more included. So I started to get the jokes a little bit more. It's very very small things, actually. Like you'd be sat in a meeting room, but you don't have a clue what's going on. So when that person put their arm around you and explains to you something, it means a lot. It meant a lot to me, and it helped me move forward and helped me gain confidence. And on the other hand, you have people that could isolate you. You have the people that are very impatient with you because you didn't understand something. And that really affected my confidence. Like in my first job, it was quite difficult because I couldn't communicate very well. People sometimes assumed I'm not very smart. I'm a bit dull, and I probably, I wasn't that bright and wasn't up to their intellectual standards, and they end up isolating you. So that was very very difficult, and there were certain individuals that I remember feeling nervous around because they are, just impatient with your um, basic English, for example. So that's very important to show that level of patience, to show and to just be kind, really.
think that's really useful advice. Thank you, Randa. And it's I think it's difficult for all of us to be patient as well. Sometimes, we're in such a hurry to get the job done or to achieve a deadline or something. We sometimes forget about the others around us. I know I certainly have in the past. And Shahad, I know you had you were a bit younger when you went to the US, and it was probably very different from Randa's experience. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. I do consider myself very different in terms of the experience from Rwanda because of the age that I came to the United States. And so, unlike Rwanda, I actually was blaming all my teenage problems on being in the West, and I'm dealing with an identity issue, thinking, am I an Arab girl? Am I an American girl? Am I supposed to be Americanized? All my friends get to stay out and they're drinking on the weekends, and I'm not doing any of those things. And it continued basically in college. I was really seeking a community. That's basically what college is sold as in the American world. It's this like fun experience that you get a community out of. You're going to make lifelong friends. And I ended up with another identity crisis, not knowing, am I really that tied to my Arab roots? Where do I fit in the professional world? It wasn't really until I became self-employed that I started to understand, I can forge my own way. This doesn't have to be whatever everybody else said. But I think it's really tough when you take on identities that you've seen in popular culture, and you get influenced by the people around you, and you think that's how you're supposed to act as an American teenager, as an American young adult, as an American entrepreneur, as a worker. And then you realize if you actually set your own boundaries, it's better. And other people who are not immigrants are setting their boundaries too. But maybe you're more shy to set your boundaries. So, for example, in the beginning, I would get invited to networking events, and I wasn't really comfortable, drinking with other lawyers. I just thought it didn't look good that I was drinking with all these lawyers all the time. But every event where you get a good job or a good client, requires socializing at cocktail hour. And I really had to figure out, what is my boundary in the workplace? What am I comfortable with? And that took some time, and I think it probably is a work in progress still. I did romanticize my homeland a lot more, and I thought, well, I wouldn't be dealing with any of this if I had just grown up in Iraq and and had my whole life there, which was an easy answer, but it wasn't the right answer, but it was always my fallback answer. And now I'm learning to figure out how can I use my identity to actually push forward the things that I believe in and still help people that are disenfranchised and uplift them in the way I felt that I was uplifted.
So that's interesting, Shahad. So how do you do that? How do you personally uplift others? And do you think that the other people in the room could maybe use the same tactics in their communities and their workplaces?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a lot to be said about doing things the old school way. And I mean, this is exactly what I mean, what we're doing today. I do a lot of speaking to community members that are not my own. I think it's actually more important that someone that doesn't look like a certain community goes into the room than someone that just looks like them. What I mean is, I could go to the Arab Community Center or a mosque or an Arab church and speak to all the people that look like me and sound like me. And they might be very happy that someone is making a difference, and they're very proud of me. But I'm probably not going to learn as much as I do speaking to a Hispanic church. And so I actually very much immersed in small community organizing within the community that I'd like to learn about and service. That type of communication with that community that's direct led me to learn about their holidays, what foods they serve, so that when I am holding events or hosting a group of people, I can understand, I can be more sensitive to them. And it's not to pander, it's actually because I'm genuinely interested that they would think, yeah, I took the time to learn this. Please help me. Help me learn more about your culture. Don't shy away from sharing something so that I could actually service you better.
Hi, sorry, my Mac died there. Can you hear me?
No worries, no worries. I was also paying attention to the chat. I love the conversations in the chat. And I think Nigel said, do you think social media has increased the pressure to fit in, or is it easier to find niche communities online? I think it depends on how you use social media. You know, some people are very much influenced by social media in a negative way, and it could really affect their mental health because they're trying so hard to fit in. But I think social media can also highlight, I credit it to the LGBTQ community. I don't have anyone in my family that I know of right now that is outwardly LGBTQ. But I've noticed a lot of the people that I may have gone to school with are able to share their real identity now online. And I'm thinking, wow, I didn't know you were a trans person when I spent 4 years in school with you, or when I worked with you for 2 years. And I love that social media is allowing me to see that side of that person, because that's who they really are. And they spend so much time hiding it to fit in with society. And that's something that I am really grateful for. But it has made me realize maybe I may have said something or mistreated that person in a way that, because I didn't know their identity at the time. And I think the newer generation, specifically, you know, millennials and later, Generation X even more so, they're more open to those diverse conversations and identifying people for who they really are rather than imposing labels on them. And I hope that trend continues in a positive way. Back over to you, Margot, or Davina.
Yeah, you can all hear me again now, I'm guessing. Please put your thumbs up if you can. Brilliant. You know when your Mac dies, can you realise it has no power halfway through your running event? That's just happened to me, but it's slightly embarrassing. So I was interested, I just think, you know, language is such a big thing now, isn't it? And as you said at the beginning, Randa, like we all work with a lot of people who maybe English or whatever language we communicate into day to day isn't their first language, and I think forget sometimes how difficult that can be, and then that then intertwines with culture as well. And I'm just thinking, you know, can you maybe talk a little bit about how those languages and culture differences can well, A, how they impact you day to day, but B, what people around you can do to maybe understand those a little bit more and to be more considerate and helpful. Randa, I could pick that one over to you first.
Yeah, sure. So it was, I think your fan was going on your laptop, wasn't it, Davina? So just to repeat the question, I think you're asking about how does language impact your day to day, right? Um, and what was the second part, Davina? Because it was a little bit loud next to you.
Yes, and sorry, I need to fix my fan while you're talking
No
in a minute,
worries.
which I will do when I get back on mute. Yes, it was just to say it's not just languages. I mean, it's also culture and cultural differences, which may not be evident at all to the people
Absolutely.
alongside you, that there are those differences.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is a very interesting point. So in addition to the language that we need to be, of course, very mindful of these people, the cultures, and I see that with a lot of Europeans who come and work here in London. London is very, very diverse. There's people from every culture working here, and Europeans normally don't look any different. But the culture, you can see there's a huge difference, and that's when you need to be thinking about inclusion when it comes to habits, when it comes to sayings, when it comes to outings. You know, there is a lot of little things that we forget. So let's take, for example, people from different religious backgrounds. you know, the culture here in the UK is people go for a drink, in London especially. People go for a drink on a Thursday night. After work, everybody goes for a drink. But what people forget is that people who are Muslim are completely alienated from this event because they are not, it's a very frowned upon for them to be in a drinking establishment. So that's one example. So then you have, of course, the language. So you have the language from the European perspective, but who probably are you know, that they're quite they speak very well, but they still don't understand the local language, which is the, you know, the expressions that people use and the sayings. I mean, Shahad and I were joking about it, and we talked about it in our podcast. I mean, for years and years, the problem with expressions is that you never see them written down. You always just hear people say them, but you never see them written down. So most of the time, I think I've picked up the wrong expression. So for the longest time, I thought, you know, when somebody hears a story from someone and they try to say, oh, I've just heard this, they say in the UK, oh, I've heard through the grapevine, the grape as in the fruit. And for years, I thought people were saying, I've heard through the grapevine. And Shahad was laughing at me in the podcast. And in all of these little things. And again, that could be very different from the UK to America. And a lot of Americans will come here and wouldn't understand a lot of the expressions, right, Davina?
Yes, absolutely. It's very, very different, I think. I've just realised that we've been chatting and it's getting on towards 10 to the hour. So I'm thinking this is a good time to open up the floor a little bit more to the audience to see if they've got any questions for us. If you, just as I said before, I think we might have had a couple of people join actually since I last said it, but if you click on the question mark to raise your hand, then Margot will pass you the microphone.
It's such a great event when you realize that you've surpassed the time that you needed and you're just talking and enjoying it.
Sally, any questions at all?
Shall we sit? I guess you mentioned that we will sit on tables at some point.
Yes, we could maybe do that. So I think because we haven't got.
Rebecca has a question.
Oh, okay, Rebecca, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think you always will go back and forth because you're trying to find a healthy balance between maintaining your identity and your essence, which made you the person that you are and made you such an interesting person, right? Because of your background, but also try to be in the culture that you're trying to embrace. And there is a fine line. I think some people go all the way and they just say, I just want to forget completely my history. And some people absolutely just hold on. So it's a spectrum. You have to figure out, where are you on the spectrum? What are you comfortable with? I think the best part about coming to a new environment is that you can make that up wherever you want. Maybe in your previous position with your previous group of friends or colleagues, you were in one point of the spectrum. Don't be afraid to move to another part of the spectrum. I know a lot of people, I think nowadays on social media, get canceled. A lot of this cancel culture, if you're one way and you decide to change your identity. I'm not saying fake an accent. I'm just saying be authentic to yourself. There are some parts of me that I've kept, and there are some parts of me that I haven't. I am an Arab woman that's Muslim, that's going to be married to an African American, born and raised in America. And so part of my identity, and now the identity we're creating together, is what part of me do I want to keep for our kids and share with them, and what part of me do I want to leave behind? And that's okay. I'm forging it. And so sometimes I have kept very cultural things and explained to even my fiance, hey, this is a cultural event. It's tied and rooted in religion, but a lot of it is culturally based. And sometimes there are some things that I've just completely wholeheartedly disconnected from. I don't usually go to the mosque anymore. I don't usually, participate the way I used to be as a practicing faithful person. But I have kept a lot of the things that I love about my culture and faith that are really tied to my identity that I think I can't get rid of because it's too late for me. And those things actually define who I am today. The reason who I am today is because I came from that background. I'm an entire book. I'm not just one chapter. So don't be afraid to be multiple colors, to be multiple, you're a song, you're a full song, you're completely up and down. Don't be afraid of that. Actually, it's the reason why you are sought after. Yeah, Randa, go ahead.
And I want to add to that. It's also a very important thing. That question kind of very important when you think about your immigrant colleagues, and if you're a leader and you're thinking about your team, because how you treat people may actually make them decide whether to integrate or whether to just stick to who they were before. And I'll give you an example. I know quite a few people who immigrated, joined the workforce, but felt those first few years of awkwardness and difficulty, and they weren't treated well, and they gave up, and they just went back, stuck to their society, which is like the Arab culture in London, and that they found that comfort zone, and they just stuck with it. So I think it's really important to think about those people and be kind to them, because we are the people that are going to help them integrate and be better people and be part of their new world rather than just be stuck in the old world. Because you've got to integrate, but so sadly, it's so sad that I see it all the time. I see Arab women that have been living here for such a long time, but they watch Arabic TV, they read news in Arabic, they go on Facebook and talk to their Arab friends, and they just mix with Arabs, and they haven't a clue about the culture they're living in. So that's not a good balance.
I agree. It's interesting, isn't it, that balance between adapting and integrating, but also not losing all of the bits of you
Your
and
identity,
your culture that you
absolutely.
value. Yeah, exactly. And also your connections to the community kind of came from, I guess. It must be a very hard balance.
And to be honest, you always lean back on those connections. No matter how advanced you're going to go in your career, there is always some part of you that's going to go back to a community you first used to identify with, even if it's just to talk to the people and say, hey, how about some reform here? How about we go in this direction here? You're going to have more access to that community. That's the first community that's going to take you in. They are your people. And so you are more likely to be influential with them than any other group. So that's power. That's really power. Does anybody have any other questions? Maybe we could do, Divina, maybe we could do some of our takeaways.
Yes, definitely do some takeaways, I think. If we both, just sum up takeaways that people can in fact take back to their offices, or maybe even to outside lives, and just use on a daily basis. That would be brilliant. And then we'll pop down and sit on the tables for the last few minutes after that. So yes, let's do a few.
Randa, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I don't mind. So I guess the takeaway for immigrants who pick up and go work in a different country is it's hard at the start. It's always going to be hard at the start, but stick with it. Stick with it, and it will get easier. But make sure you throw yourself in situations. Throw yourself into the deep end. You're never going to learn a culture by watching TV or reading books about it. You learn a culture by embracing it. So embrace the new culture, embrace your place, and it will get better, and it will get more fun, and you'll gain your sense of humor, and you'll gain yourself, and you become an even better, stronger person. So that's my thinking of the takeaway for the immigrant. Shahed, do you want to do a takeaway? I also have a little takeaway for the leaders out there, but I'll go after you, Shahed.
Thank you. Yeah, I divided my takeaways directed to the employee versus the employer. And so my takeaway for the employee is that kind of to talk about the theme that I've been talking about the whole time, is that you might always feel like you're different no matter how much you try to blend in. And you get to the point in your career where that becomes the key to your success. The key to your success is actually not what makes you the same, but what differentiates you. And a lot of that was mentioned in the chat, especially people in the tech world, like you guys know, you said, headsets were created for men, and so they didn't fit women properly and things like that. I really love that example, and I'm gonna borrow it. I think it's from Nigel or Alejandra. I'm gonna borrow that example and use it. And I think companies that passed you up because you are different is not the company that you're looking for. That's not the right place for you. So don't get upset. Oh, I didn't get that job because of who I am. Yeah, you know what? You didn't want to work there anyway. The better company is the one that's going to value you for what you bring to the table and all of the things that make you who you are. That's why they have you. They have you because you bring in something I have never thought about. Yes, tell me what a disabled person is going to need from my application, because otherwise, how would I know? And so your identity struggle will actually make you that different employee, and it's going to finally make you a mentor and push you farther in your career. So try to hone that rather than distance yourself from it. Thank you.
And I can say, shall I talk about the takeaway for the leaders who are trying to have a diverse team from different cultures? I would say always take a chance on people from different backgrounds, because they always bring new things to the table. I think somebody also mentioned in the chat about how a certain set of people will design just for themselves. And I see it every single day in my little team, which is a very diverse team. We're a team of 7, but from every single one of us is from a different background. And one of us will go, oh, no, you can't do the naming like this, because in Colombia, the naming convention is like that. Now, these little things add so much value. So take a chance on these different people from different backgrounds. And I would also say, when you have this wonderful collection of people, be mindful of the little things as a leader. Be mindful of the language you use. Make sure that they understand your language. Be mindful of the jokes that they may not get. Be mindful of all of these little things, and make sure these people are included, because just think about being in a room where everybody is enjoying a joke and that person is not. As a leader, just make sure these people are kind of integrated and included. Over to you, Shahed.
Thank you. I'm going to share something that may not be popular because I see it a lot on LinkedIn now, especially in the corporate world. A lot of companies that I see hire and create a specific position for head of diversity or director of diversity and inclusion. And that person, they've created a salary, they've created an entire job for someone to tell the company what to do about diversity. And I'm thinking, you already got this far, just hire the diversity people. Just already go the extra step. Why did you just create the position to tell you what you're doing wrong? You know what you're doing wrong. And so to the employers out there, or to anybody that can have an employer's ear, just do the change. Just be the change. You don't have to wait. You don't need a commission or a study. You know how the world is, and you're open-minded enough to open it up. So open up your own company. You're in a position of power. You can't complain anymore and say, oh, well, I'm trying this and I'm trying that. You are now the person that can effectuate change. And so I really put the onus on the employers and the people who are in leadership positions because they can change the entire company culture by little small choices that they make on a daily basis.
Oh, thank you, Shahad and Randa. And we are actually on the hour now. So what I'm going to suggest is a huge round of applause for our speakers. That's the little blue clappy hands. That's the one. I'm going to keep the room open for another 10-15 minutes. Our speakers and us will stay around and we'll come and sit down on the tables with you. So if anyone wants to hang around and chat with each other or with any of us, then feel free to do so. And for any of you who do have to shoot off, we look forward to seeing you in a month's time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for having us, Davina.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you guys so much.
Fantastic speakers.